This is the story of how archaeologists, satellite imaging, and a 12,000-year-old buried temple may have cracked one of history's most debated mysteries, and the answer has almost nothing to do with religion. The Garden of Eden. You know the story. A perfect paradise, a man, a woman, a snake, a piece of fruit, and then expulsion. Most people file that away as mythology, or faith, or some ancient moral fable. But here's the thing. The more scientists, archaeologists, and geologists actually dig into the evidence, the more they keep finding something real underneath it. Not a literal garden with a flaming sword at the gate. Something far more interesting than that. The Garden of Eden may have actually existed, just not in the way you've been picturing it. Start with what the source material actually says, because Genesis doesn't describe Eden in vague, poetic terms. It gets weirdly specific. 4 rivers are named. A single river flows out of Eden and splits into 4 branches: the Pishon, the Gihon, the Tigris, and the Euphrates. 2 of those rivers still exist today, still flowing through Turkey, Syria, and Iraq, still findable on any modern map. That specificity is what kept researchers hooked for centuries, and the reason is obvious when you think about it. Pure mythology doesn't name real rivers. Pure allegory doesn't describe gold deposits and precious stones in particular regions. The text even specifies that the land of Havilah has gold, and that the gold is good. That's not the language of a fable. That's the language of someone describing a place they have been. The word Eden itself comes from the Sumerian word for plain or steppe. And here's something most people have never heard. The word paradise. The word we use casually every day traces directly back to the Greek word paradeisos, used by ancient scholars, translating the Hebrew word for garden. Paradise, etymologically, is the Garden of Eden. The concept has lived inside our language for thousands of years without most people ever noticing. So the question scholars kept returning to wasn't really whether Eden shaped human culture. Clearly it did. The question was whether any real place inspired it, and if so, where? 3 serious answers exist to that question, and each one reveals something worth sitting with. The first comes from an archaeologist named Juris Zarins, a professor who spent decades working in the Middle East and who, in the 1980s, started doing something no Eden hunter had done before. He turned to satellite imagery, and what he found stopped him cold. Photographs of the Arabian Peninsula, taken from space, revealed a massive dried riverbed cutting diagonally across the desert. On the ground it looks like nothing, just sand dunes and flat emptiness. From orbit, the ghost of an ancient river is unmistakable. And then, in 1994, radar imaging from the space shuttle confirmed it. A fossil river, 600 miles long, running from a region historically called the Cradle of Gold, a gold mining site south of Medina that is, as it happens, still an active mine today. That region matches exactly what Genesis describes as the land of Havilah. Gold, aromatic resins, precious stones. Zarins identified that dried channel as the biblical Pishon, one of Eden's 2 mystery rivers, and the Karun River in southwestern Iran as the Gihon. Trace all 4 rivers together: Tigris, Euphrates, Karun, and the ancient dried channel, and they converge at a single point that is now sitting underwater. Before the last ice age ended, the Persian Gulf didn't exist as we know it. Sea levels ran 200 feet lower than today, and the entire basin was dry land, a lush, well-watered plain fed by 4 rivers meeting at one location. Then the glaciers melted, the ocean climbed, and around 4000 BCE, that entire region drowned beneath the Gulf. Whatever civilization had built a life there was gone. Boston University geologist Farouk Elbaz reached the same conclusion independently, detecting the same dried riverbed across Arabia, ending in Kuwait, the exact location Zarins had identified. 2 researchers working from separate angles, arriving at the same spot on the map. But Zarins' argument ran deeper than geography. The Sumerians, the people who built the first cities of Mesopotamia, preserved an oral tradition insisting that their ancestors had come out of the sea. To them, Zarins wrote, Eden wasn't a story at all. It was the living tradition of their origins, a real place that had flooded within cultural memory and been carried forward through generations until it finally entered Genesis. His 1987 piece in the Smithsonian magazine made waves across the academic world, and then the space shuttle confirmed the river. The second piece of evidence is arguably stranger. 6 miles from the Turkish city of Urfa, on a limestone hill called Göbekli Tepe, archaeologists from the German Archaeological Institute arrived in 1994 and started digging. The site had been spotted in the 1960s and written off as a medieval cemetery. What excavation revealed became one of the most debated finds in modern archaeology. Massive T-shaped limestone pillars, arranged in circles, some of them 18 feet tall and weighing up to 50 tons, covered in carved reliefs of foxes, snakes, vultures, lions, gazelles, and boars. Construction dated to approximately 11,600 years ago, which places it 6,000 years before Stonehenge. Writing didn't exist yet. Neither did pottery, the wheel, or agriculture. Hunter-gatherers built this. People we typically picture as barely surviving from one meal to the next. And they did it with a level of organization and geometric precision that researchers are still working to understand. Lead archaeologist Klaus Schmidt called it a cathedral on a hill, and Stanford's Ian Hodder put it plainly, Göbekli Tepe changes everything. Only about 5% of the site has been excavated, and surveys suggest up to 250 more megaliths may still be buried underground. Now here's where Eden enters the picture. Göbekli Tepe sits between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, Eden's 2 confirmed waterways. Genesis places Eden west of Assyria, and that's precisely where Göbekli Tepe lands on the map. Ancient Assyrian texts reference a place called Beth Eden, meaning House of Eden, a minor kingdom located just 50 miles away. A separate Old Testament passage mentions the children of Eden in Telassar, a town in northern Syria near the same site. And the plains Göbekli Tepe sits on are the plains of Haran, which in Sumerian is Eden. The animal and plant remains recovered. They describe a world that no longer exists in that region. What looks today like barren semi-desert was once covered in meadows, forests, and wild fields of barley and wheat, with vast herds of gazelle moving through it. Schmidt himself said, Göbekli Tepe is not the Garden of Eden. It is a temple in Eden. The official research team pushes back firmly on the Eden label, stating there is no archaeological evidence for the connection, and they raise valid points. No water sources exist at the site, the rivers don't match perfectly, and the biblical Eden contains no constructed buildings. But Schmidt's framing deserves attention. Not Eden itself, but a temple built inside the region that inspired the story. And then something happened at the site that nobody has ever fully explained. Between roughly 10,500 years ago and 8,000 BCE, Göbekli Tepe was active, used, central to something, and then it was deliberately buried, not abandoned, not forgotten. Someone filled it in intentionally, covered the pillars under tons of earth, and walked away. The reason for that act remains completely unknown. Around that same time, 20 miles from the site, geneticists found the world's oldest known domesticated wheat at a nearby prehistoric village. 60 miles away, at Kayonu, the world's first farmyard pigs were domesticated. Sheep, cattle and goats were first domesticated in eastern Turkey as well, and nearly every major crop and livestock animal that would go on to feed human civilization traces its origins to the hills surrounding Göbekli Tepe. Schmidt's most direct challenge to conventional history came down to a single reversal. He didn't believe agriculture produced civilization. He believed civilization produced agriculture. People gathered at Göbekli Tepe for ritual and ceremony, possibly traveling from as far as 100 miles away. And hunting and gathering couldn't feed that many people in one place. So the wild grasses on the surrounding hills got cultivated. Religion came first, and farming followed. First came the temple, then the city. And when farming took hold and reshaped everything, the monuments at Göbekli Tepe lost their meaning. The trees came down for farmland. The soil eroded. What had been a paradise of wild abundance turned into a land of exhausting labor, and somebody buried the temple. Researcher Sandra Sham's findings showed that farming itself destroyed sections of Göbekli Tepe, evidence that by the time agriculture dominated the region, the site's significance had collapsed. The third answer is the one most scholars find hardest to dismiss, and it isn't a geographic location at all. It's a memory. The Eden story may encode one of the oldest pieces of human history ever committed to writing, a cultural scar left by the most brutal transition our species ever survived. For 2.5 million years, human beings roamed, gathered, and hunted. Historian Yuval Harari noted in *Sapiens* that all of this changed roughly 10,000 years ago when people began devoting their entire lives to manipulating a small number of plant and animal species. Archaeological evidence consistently shows that hunter-gatherers were measurably healthier than early farmers, broader diets, shorter working hours, more equal social structures. When populations crossed over to agriculture, their skeletons literally changed, shrinking temporarily, growing less robust, as bodies adjusted to protein-poor diets and relentless physical work. Zarins extended the argument further. The story of Cain, a farmer, killing Abel, a herdsman, lands immediately after the Eden expulsion in Genesis, and Zarins read that as a direct echo of the violent friction between early farming communities and the hunter-gatherers they displaced. That confrontation, he argued, was so defining for early civilization that it lodged permanently in Sumerian oral tradition and eventually passed into the Hebrew Bible. Hunter-gatherer societies, by the anthropological record, also tended toward more egalitarian and matriarchal structures, while farming communities shifted toward patriarchy and rigid hierarchy. The specific curses Genesis places on Eve, subjugation, and on Adam, a lifetime of agricultural labor, map directly onto those documented social changes. The expulsion from paradise wasn't two people being punished for eating fruit. It was an entire species losing a way of life that had worked for millions of years and finding that the new one was harder, lonelier, and non-negotiable. So here's what the evidence actually adds up to. Satellite imaging confirmed a 600-mile fossil river matching Genesis's description, tracing to a convergence point now buried under the Persian Gulf, submerged around 4000 BCE. A 12,000-year-old ceremonial complex sits in the precise geographic region Genesis describes, surrounded by ancient place names that echo the biblical text, built by hunter-gatherers at the exact moment the Neolithic shift began, and then deliberately buried when farming took over. The word paradise descends etymologically from the biblical word for garden, baked into ordinary language for thousands of years. And a story in Genesis, written long after these events, describes with uncomfortable accuracy what the skeletal, genetic, and archaeological record shows actually happened when humanity left the hunter-gatherer life behind. The Garden of Eden almost certainly wasn't a literal garden with a flaming sword at the gate, but dismissing it as pure fiction misses something that the evidence keeps pointing toward. Across every continent, independently, every human civilization carried some version of a lost paradise, a golden age, a time before the fall. And the reason for that consistency may be simpler than it sounds. They all descended from people who remembered, however faintly, what life felt like before the knowledge of agriculture changed everything. A river valley that flooded, a temple on a hill that was buried, a way of living that never came back. The story was preserved, compressed, reshaped across thousands of years of telling, until it became a book that billions of people still read today. The fall from paradise wasn't divine punishment. The people who buried that temple knew exactly what they were losing, and they buried it anyway, because the world had already moved on without them.